Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey, it's Jessa. Welcome back to the Better Sex Podcast. Thanks for tuning in and joining me, and especially glad that you're here for this episode. This is really interesting. I'm talking to Betty Martin about the Wheel of Consent and her new book, which is about the art of both receiving and giving, which I talk about all the time and is such a core element of the whole intimacy with ease method. And she's actually talking about what is known as a 3-minute game, a version of which I've sort of taken in a direction that I call the giver-receiver exercise. So they're highly, highly related. But she's been doing this work for a very long time and is now written a book about it. And we're having this great conversation about the importance of being able to think about yourself, about what you want to do, to receive as touch, the touch you want to give, why this is so hard for so many people, and how to develop it, how to practice so there can be this balance in your sexual relationship. And of course, it all relates to boundaries and consent and knowing what your limits are and being able to take care of those boundaries for yourself. Anyway, it's a great conversation with really a pioneer in the field, and I'm just so happy to have her on the show. I hope you enjoy it. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so that you can actually just enjoy your sex life with zero stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. So, Betty, thank you so much for being on the show with me.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my favorite topic. So I'm excited to talk to you. I would love to hear about the origins of the book. What made this happen? How long have you been thinking about it?
That's a good question. I have been working on the book for 13 years. So a long time, almost embarrassingly long. And it started when I took a workshop back in the mid-90s with the Body Electric School and learned a lot of things about my own eroticism, and took some more workshops and met with some other people and kind of underwent a whole erotic journey. And somewhere in those years, I took a workshop again with the Body Electric School called Power, Surrender, and Intimacy. And in it, we played a game called the 3-minute game. And it was 2 questions. You take turns asking each other these 2 questions.
Okay.
And the 2 questions are, what do you want me to do to you for 3 minutes? And then you negotiate that and you do whatever it was. And then, what do you want to do to me for 3 minutes? And then negotiate that and do that. So with 2 people and 2 questions, you end up with 4 rounds of the game.
Okay.
And 2 of them you're doing, and 2 of them you're being done to.
Yeah.
And in 2 of them, it's what you want, and in 2 of them, it's what the other person wants.
Although negotiated.
Yes, negotiated, and respecting the boundaries and all that. So you end up with 4 different quadrants of possibility. I'm doing what you want, or I'm doing what I want. And it turns out that there's quite a difference.
Okay.
Or you're doing what you want, or you're doing what I want. And again, quite a difference between those 2. And the first time I played it, I thought, oh my God, is this fun? It's like, oh yeah, I can think of things, to do.
Which was your favorite quadrant? I mean, do people tend to have a favorite?
People often tend to have a favorite. And probably what most people are most comfortable with is doing what the other person wants.
Yeah.
But the one that tends to be tricky for people is doing what they want. And it's also so fun when you really believe the consent that you have. And when you understand what their boundaries are, so you're not worried about going across those boundaries, it's just a heck of a lot of fun.
So wait, doing what you want to the other person
yes,
is the hardest one, not getting what you want.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And for other people, it'll be hard to ask, will you rub my feet or will you scratch my back or whatever.
Right.
That one also tends to be hard for people.
Yeah. So basically thinking about yourself instead of your partner. Yeah. And this comes up in sex therapy all the time, right? This is something I talk about constantly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that taught me that receiving is different than, or who's giving a gift and who's receiving a gift, the different question than who is doing the thing.
Yeah.
And so that then little light bulb started to go off in my head, and I saw this diagram of like quadrants. And that's what the wheel of consent is. It's just a diagram of those quadrants.
Okay.
And then I started playing it with my clients and doing sex coaching at the time. And then I learned all kinds of things. And that's what's in the book.
Okay.
So that's kind of a long story of how to get to the book.
Okay. And you did say if you understand the consent. So part of this is about negotiating and getting really clear on consent, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because then it's more fun.
Yeah.
If I know, if I'm going to do something to you, if I know what your boundaries are and I'm going to abide by them, then I don't have to worry about doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. What would you say about why both of these are important? I mean, thinking about there's 4 quadrants, but thinking about ourselves and not just thinking about our partners.
Well, gosh, it seems so self-evident that it's important. But
I know it is to me too, but it's something I'm constantly trying to reinforce with clients.
Yeah. It's a great question because so many times, or, some advice that I've seen is always think about your partner and always do to please your partner. And that's really a great thing to do sometimes.
Right.
But if that's the only place you can be, then you kind of have to live vicariously because you have nothing for you. And it's not sustainable. Giving is a really important human skill. And it's a need, I think, that we have. But to be stuck in giving because you don't know how to think of yourself or how to receive a gift, that's kind of a prison sentence. And you just starve to death.
Yeah. And it strikes me that, first of all, we're kind of robbing our partner from the opportunity to give.
Yeah.
Or we're putting it on them to figure out what to give us.
Oh, hell yes.
Like you should, I don't know what I want. You come up with it. You're supposed to know, you're the.
Yeah. And then we can blame them if it's not right.
Yeah.
That's very handy.
Yeah. Both of these seem really problematic to me. So I'm constantly trying to convince people how important it is to be selfish in sex. Obviously balanced with giving, but.
The thing that the wheel of consent does is it's a practice in taking them apart. So you're doing one at a time. It doesn't mean that you should live your life that way.
One at a time.
But it's a practice in taking them apart. And so then you learn what they are, and then you can play in them.
Yeah. So, we sort of alluded to this, but what are the struggles that people have? You said you started doing this with your clients and learned a ton. So tell me a little bit about what came out of that and what you learned.
Well, one of the things that you just alluded to was that many people have no idea what they want, or don't know that it's okay to want something, or don't know how to ask it. If they did have an idea, they're afraid to ask for it, or they're afraid, that people are really afraid of being selfish, which kind of ironically makes us more selfish in the not so healthy sense of the word. Here's another thing that I learned. People feel like when they're the ones that are being done to, so they're being touched by someone, if you don't know how to ask for how you want to be touched, then you pretty much feel like all this touch that's happening to you is it's for the other person because they didn't ask me what I want. I don't know what I want. So I'm kind of going along with whatever's happening. And if I don't really like it, I think I'm supposed to like it. So I try to like it. That was a big one.
Yeah. Accept what's given, right?
Yeah,
like just,
accept what's given, like whether you like it. And if you don't like it, it must be something wrong with you. So you should like it better.
Yeah.
That was a big one. I'd ask people how they wanted to be touched for a few minutes, and they'd say, well, you could such and such, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's true, I could, but that wasn't the question. But it's very, very common. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all do it to some degree.
Right. What about people that struggle with the other side?
With the giving side?
Yeah, I know that happens too, right? Like, I can think about me, but it's really hard for me to actually care about what somebody else wants, you know? I mean, I get that in my practice, that's less common, way less common. But
yeah, same here. Yeah, it's so rare, actually, that, you know, it may be that those people aren't coming to get coaching or help. You know,
that's true. Yeah, I see a little bit more of it because in my sex therapy practice, I only work with couples. So it's not like the individual is necessarily coming to me thinking there's a problem, but their partner might be. So
Right.
Yeah.
But I have seen people who can't. It's funny. When you learn to take the two apart, you have experiences in which it's just about you. You're receiving a gift and it touches your heart. And that sort of cracks your heart open in a certain way. And that's vulnerable. And it also, because you know how to receive, you can learn how to give. Because you know that, here's a time that my desires count. Here's a time to set my desires aside and pay attention to someone else's desires.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some kind of way in which taking them apart helps you learn both of them easier.
That makes sense to me too, because if we're talking about somebody who give, never really focused on themselves, not only is that going to be unsustainable, but their giving would be a little more hollow potentially, right?
Yeah.
Because by that not receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think none of us can give all the time. So we still have our needs. And if the only way we know how to relate is to give, quote, give, then we try to give in a way that's going to get us something back, but we haven't admitted that we want something back.
Right. It's a little bit sideways.
Yeah, it's a side. Yeah. That's where it gets, I've agreed to give you a back rub, but what I really want is to feel you up. So which is it going to be?
Yeah.
I can give you a back rub and sort of sneak in the feeling up, but that doesn't feel good to either of us. It's a time-honored tradition. However, it's certainly been done enough.
So now I've got more questions, but how does this show up for somebody or for a couple? How do they start to realize this is a problem? What are the ways this plays out in a relationship, in a sexual relationship that says, maybe we've got some stuff to learn here. We have not been focused on the balance of these quadrants.
That's a great question. One of the ways I think it shows up, it's I've never had a couple come in and say, we need help with the quadrants.
Right.
But they come in and say, well, things have fallen kind of flat. Or I want sex more than my partner, or my partner wants sex more than me. And when that happens, I'll always ask them, well, define sex, because, and I think it mostly comes in things are just kind of falling flat, because if you don't have an opportunity to express your desire and get your desires met, at least to some degree, then you're going to get kind of bored. You're going to get burned out, and you're going to say, well, this isn't really any fun. And so the reason you don't want sex, and I've got air quotes here, is it's not that it's because is the sex you've been having worth wanting? Is it meeting your desires for closeness or play or creativity or sensuality, or, it's probably not, because sex is a lot of things. It's not just orifices,
Yeah, right. Hi, it's Jessa here, taking just a quick break. Thanks for listening so far. I wanted to let you know about the sex quiz that I've put together called How Healthy Is Your Sex Life? I've taken a close look at the typical ways that I see couples get into trouble with sex, including avoidance, neglect, negativity, distraction, and boredom. And the free quiz will score your individual results based on these factors. And then I provide my recommendations and ideas, including my top 10 sex tips, which will help you make instant improvement. If you'd like to take the quiz and see how healthy your sex life is, you can do it right now at sexhealthquiz.com. So in some ways, there's lots and lots of answers to this question, but why do people struggle with this? How is it, you think, that so many of us are so poorly equipped to receive or to know what we want or to be able to speak to that? Like,
I think one reason is that we conflate receiving with being done to. And it's natural because the word receive can be used that way. You can receive a blow to the head.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Is that a gift?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
But we think that if we're being done to, it's supposed to be for us. And so therefore, we should like it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like it. And so it's very confusing, especially when stuff happens to us that we definitely don't like, and we have to deal with it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think that, well, there's something wrong with me. I'm supposed to like this. I don't like this. There's something wrong with what the other person's doing. And I think that's one big factor. And another, I think, is that we have all been done to against our will in ways that we didn't want and we didn't like and we couldn't stop. And it happened before we could talk. So preverbally, our bodies know how to go along with stuff that we don't like.
Give me an example besides, some sort of sexual abuse, but...
Well, you have your diapers changed, you have your nose wiped, you're picked up, you're prevented from hitting your little brother,
Yeah.
And, you go to bed when you're not sleepy, you're fed when you're not hungry. And, so we all, even in the very best of circumstances, it's just part of childhood. Stuff happens that you don't like. And so we learn, our bodies learn that touch, that's that thing that happens to me that I can't do anything about. That's just the nature of it. It just, stuff happens to me. And, to greater or lesser degrees, it varies, of course. And so touch, that's that thing that I have to figure out how to deal with. And I have to learn to tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're lucky, we have opportunities to learn that we do have a choice, but not everybody has that opportunity.
Yeah.
And many of us have never been asked how we want to be touched because it's awkward. No one ever thought of it. They're touching us the way they think that we're supposed to want to be touched, or they saw in the video that they're supposed to, there's this magic spot that they're supposed to get. And so I think that's why it's so difficult and confusing.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, also thinking about just some of the messages about sort of sex negativity or pleasure isn't even good or okay, or it's not okay to be selfish, there's just...
Oh, yeah.
It seems like when I really think about it, it's like we're up against a lot to be able to be like, hey, I know what I want and this is what I want. I mean, that's kind of a big lift for people.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah. You're not supposed to have pleasure. Really, you're not supposed to have a body.
Yeah, right. We just live from our neck up and that's it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really true. So how do people get better at this? I mean, there's a 3-minute game, but do you just sort of repeat that over and over and over again? Or are there phases people go through? How do you support somebody's development into really becoming an adept receiver?
Well, you read the book and do your things in there.
Right. Read the book. Yes.
It takes you through a process. And this is what I've done with all my clients. We start with essentially the 3-minute game. But it really helps to start. And this is why 3 minutes is so brilliant. I didn't make it up. If someone else I learned the game from Harry Faddis. But 3 minutes is brilliant because you can give somebody exquisite attention for 3 minutes, but you might not be able to give them for an hour.
Yeah.
And same thing with receiving attention. Most of us, you can receive some really good attention for 3 minutes before you blow a fuse,
Yeah.
So what I recommend is start with areas that are not terribly sexy. start with your clothes on, start not in the bedroom, so that the noticing what you want, asking for what you want, is not charged with sex, and it becomes natural. You just keep coming back to it, and it becomes more and more natural. And then you will gradually be interested in extending the longer times. You know, you play the 10-minute game, the 20-minute game, the 2-hour game, you know, and you'll gradually start being interested in getting more erotic, maybe, if you are. But
yeah,
I definitely recommend starting with just the hands or feet or someplace that's not terribly sexy.
Yeah.
And, which I shouldn't say that, because there are people for whom the hands and feet are very sexy. But anyway, start with some air that's not particularly sexy for you.
Yeah, something that's easy, feels easy, attainable. Okay. And then you just keep doing the same game, but maybe less clothing, different location, more options.
So you're asking the same basic questions.
Yeah.
But every time you play, it's going to be different. Mm-hmm. And you'll find things that you never thought of before, that you didn't know you liked.
Yeah.
And the I think one of the things that's powerful about it is that the noticing what you want and asking for it, that's the key.
Yeah.
The touch is kind of a bonus.
Right.
But the real skill that you learn is noticing what you want and asking for it. And that's where the liberation is. And that's where the freedom is. And then you can go anywhere.
So talk to me a little bit about the negotiation or the boundaries or the role of no in this whole process. Like, how do you talk to people about, yeah, you want that, but I don't like that. So what?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you know, in our lives, if you're going to say no, it's generally thought of as polite to say something else like, well, I'm not into that, but maybe this, or, you know, I'm a no, but next Friday ask me again, you know, that kind of thing. But in the practice, what I recommend is just say no, or yes, but only to hear, or yes, but no squeezing, or yes, but no tickling, or yes, you can have my right leg, but not my left leg, or yes, you can do that if you do it slowly. So that, and that's part of the negotiation that becomes actually very fun and becomes very natural, because if I'm going to give you something, either I'm giving you my action by doing what you want, or I'm giving you my body, then of course there are limits to what I'm willing to give. And that's really important. And it's important because when I know my limits, or when I can speak my limits, yes, you can have my leg, but only up to here, then I can be generous within those limits, and then it becomes a joy to give. If I'm worried about, are you going to creep up past my knee, or are you going to try this or try that, then I can't relax, and
right.
That's no fun.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you talk to people about where those limits should be? Should it just be, I don't feel like it, so no? Or is there room to, like, where does somebody work a little bit beyond their comfort zone? Where's that useful versus ill-advised? Because other people really struggle, you know, they're not going to say no unless it's really bad. How do you talk to people about where that no should live or come from?
There's no should for no. Any reason is a good enough reason.
Okay.
So I don't feel like it, or I'm not comfortable with it. It's perfectly fine reason. And again, where it's in a context of a game or a practice.
Right.
So you go into the practice in the container, you learn what you learn, and then you go out back into your regular life and you take those learnings with you and you apply them however it seems fit. I'm not an expert on that. But inside the game, what I encourage is, if there's something that feels a little edgy, like maybe you want me to spank your butt, and maybe that's edgy for me, and I'm going to say, well, I don't know. What I encourage you to do is listen for the pull, not the push. So the push would be, I really should be okay with that. If I wasn't such a dud, I'd be okay with that. I really should just push past myself.
Yeah.
Forget that. Listen instead for the pull, which is, that's a little edgy, but it also sounds fun. It's a little scary, but I really want it. Like things that are edgy in that way will pull you forward, because they sound scary, but fun, so listen for the pull.
Okay.
When you hear yourself saying, oh, I really should get over that, forget it. That is not the time. Because part of what you're learning here is to respect your own boundaries.
Right.
And that's really hard for a lot of us, so, and that's respecting your own boundaries is far more important than doing something.
Doing a thing.
Doing the thing.
Yeah.
Far more important.
Yeah. I talk to people about that a lot if they've had, trauma, which so many people have had, or if this has been a relationship where they've been showing up and doing things without wanting to for a long time, all of this, it's like err on the, be more cautious, right? Err on the side of no and learn to really take care of yourself.
Yeah. And then you learn you can trust yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can have a lot more fun.
Right. And your partner can trust you, right? Like it's so crucial for them to know that you're going to take care of yourself and that you've got limits and that you're taking care of those for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's just hard. I don't know anybody who is totally good at it.
Yeah. At least naturally, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a learned skill.
Yeah, I think it is.
So where can people find you? Could you say a little bit about what kind of things, besides, the book first, but also what other kinds of things you've got available for people if they're interested or want to know more? Yeah,
the book is at wheelofconsentbook.com, and you can buy it. You can watch some free videos. You can get a free chapter. So go get a free chapter before you buy it, and then you'll have an idea of whether it's worth buying. And my website is bettymartin.org.
Okay.
And I am not seeing clients anymore, but I'm working with practitioners and professionals.
Okay.
And I work with the School of Consent, which is the schoolofconsent.org. And all those websites link together. You can find them. Right. If you find one, you'll find the other. And these days, I and my colleagues offer trainings for practitioners on how to take this and use it with your clients.
Okay.
And teach it in workshops. So that's mostly what I'm doing. And I just love working with other practitioners, and I do supervision and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's come out of 30 years as a chiropractor, then 15 years as a sex coach and a sex worker. And another.
That seems like a bit of a leap. Can I ask about that before we wrap up? Like, how did you go from chiropractor for so long to sex coaching and sex work?
Well, I was chiropractor for, 30 years. I just loved it. And at some point, I took those workshops that I described at the beginning, and that put me on a personal journey. And that journey just was very deep and very rich for 5 or 10 years. And it was out of that I realized I wanted to offer this to other people. And so then I started doing that. And before I opened that studio, I closed my chiropractic office and moved to the city, to Seattle, because it was a totally different thing.
Right. And you don't want people to get confused about what to expect in the office, right?
No. And plus I was in a little small town, Vashon Island, and moved to the city. So the sex work and the sex coaching came out of my own personal development that I undertook just for me. I wasn't thinking about working with it professionally. And then after some years of it, I thought, I want to offer this to other people because this is good stuff.
I'm glad you do. So.
Thank you. I have just loved it. I've just loved it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
You are so welcome. It's great to talk with you.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.